Justin, this is a real treat. Always appreciate our chats. And, I know one of the things that we've talked about before is that, how do you best empower your team and then really creating a coaching culture? I'm a big believer in creation of and fostering and nurturing of culture. And I'd love to get your thoughts. How do you approach this with your teams?
Yeah, it's a big question. And, it really comes down to intentionality and recognizing, first off, that's important. We want, you hear people say things, hire good people, get out of their way. But in the some sense, we say that, but yet as leaders, we still want to be the hero. We want to get these people, but we get fulfillment out of helping them do it and like having our hands wrapped all around it. Where one of the best advice I ever received from a mentor was when I would go to him with a question. He would never give me his opinion before asking me this one simple question. He'd say, you're closer to this. What do you think? And what he helped me understand is more often than not, when I came to him with a question or an issue or a challenge, I had an idea what I wanted to get done already. But I was looking for his affirmation. I was maybe insecure. And what that question, what do you think? You're closer to this. It allows your team to be able to share their opinions and create people that think. And then they think to make decisions. So it's that one question, hey, what do you think? Before you give an answer. Now it's to a point where the folks on my team, they'll call me. And many times they'll say, look, I know you want to ask me what I think. Can you please just tell me what you think? I really need your opinion on this. Because from an empowerment standpoint, I want them to know that I trust them and I trust their judgment. But that all comes from intentionality and then pushing down the fact that it's easy for us driven, type A, want to be in control, to bring that to our teams. But really what we have to do is the opposite, and we got to let them go.
That's super powerful. In my mind, we put people into roles for very specific reasons. Obviously we hire them because we believe they're a difference maker and they have differentiators, right? I'm looking for somebody to, fill a role that has some level of autonomy, that they're going to be able to go out and do things the way that they see fit. And it isn't my job as a leader to go in and poke and prod and examine everything that they're doing. In fact, it's quite the opposite. If they're performing, it's often ideally our role to diagnose where there may be opportunities for them to broaden impact, to drive more outcomes. But frankly, I spend the majority of the time with my team figuring out how they're doing it and seeing what best practices I can take from this star player to this star player.
Sure.
Things that I can do to evangelize what they're doing, put them in a position to win. Something else that you really hit on there, Justin, that resonated with me is that we're not the hero. In fact, often our role is to be relatively invisible in the day to day. It's to inspect and to be available. So if they need to tap us for strategy or, how to execute better, we want to be available. In fact, that's ultimately sometimes the greatest sign that they trust you, that they value your feedback, is when they solicit that from you. So take that as high praise, but don't necessarily naturally insert yourself into the process. We hire people so that they can go out and do it their way. Their way is not always going to look the same way as ours. And there's a reason that they're in the role that they're in, and there's a reason that we're in the role we're in. I'd love to stay on the culture element for, a bit longer. And what have you seen, maybe some lessons that you've learned, maybe some things, because we're always evolving as leaders too. What would you say have been some key learnings that you've had along the way of things that work and things that don't work when you're creating culture?
Well, you kind of hit on it from a hiring standpoint. When I was first in leadership, who I went to hire? I went out and tried to hire someone that was exactly like me. I tried to find someone with the same talents, the same strengths, because as a new leader, I thought, well, if I could have done that role really well, if I get someone just like me, they'll perform really well. And that's very true for a short period. And then you look around and your entire team has the same strengths, the same weaknesses, and there's gigantic gaps. So culturally, what I've really enjoyed is looking to hire a role, and not just for the person, but how that person fits into your team. So for example, we hired a new sales leader who's going to manage a large book of our business in our organization, had 9 direct reports. We were between 2 candidates. One candidate everyone loved. The other candidate had a couple little warts, but the things he was really, really good at, our team was terrible at. So we actually went with the candidate that maybe on paper didn't look as good, but since then he's fit into our team and he's made us so much better. So that's been one of the big pieces for me as I've gotten older. Is it's really like a basketball team or a football team. You know, if you've got 4 really great centers and you come to the draft and the best player available is a center, you may not take that person because there's another spot. And so culturally, when you allow that, that also lets you play to everyone on your team's strengths. Because we actually, on our team, we call it out. Our leadership team, we know who's really good at what. We know who's not as good at the certain things. And that really helps us all delegate together. And then it's also empowering to know, you know, when you're a director of one segment, another director calls you and says, hey, I really need some help. I know you're good at this. You know how great that person feels that got called and asked for help? So then that culture starts to begin like a coaching culture to where not only that I'm the coach, but we're helping each other as we're coaching each other. But if you're all the exact same with the same strengths, you're going to have a really hard time doing that.
Amazing. I couldn't agree more, because here's the thing. Everybody has to have, you know, they've got their own unique superpower that they bring to the table. And having a team that looks all the same, sounds all the same, that isn't going to lead to learning and growth for the greater sum of the parts. I love that you called that out, because I remember when I first started out in hiring, I was very similar in that I would look for, you know, somebody that had a lot of sales experience, you know, somebody maybe that sold something similar to what my product was at the time. But the reality is that, you know, are they really doing something? Have they shown this ability or this penchant to be able to, you know, sell in the face of adversity, or to sell during a downturn, or to sell in ambiguous situations? You know, that experience on paper didn't necessarily speak to those superpowers, those strengths. The things that I look for now when I'm hiring are completely different than then. And I appreciate your candor, because it's not easy sometimes for, you know, for us as leaders to own up to some of those learnings. You know, I'd love to be able to say that, you know, oh yeah, everybody that I've ever hired has just come in and, you know, spun everything into gold, but that's not reality. The reality is, you know, we learn in these situations. Every decision we make there's some risk attached. And that's why as candidates, often we want to try to de-risk that decision for anybody that might hire or promote us. On the flip side of that, you know, when we're hiring, there is risk attached, but there's just as much, if not more, risk to hiring someone that has the exact same attributes that you have. And that's why I love taking that very diversified approach of looking at, okay, you know, what do I want my team to look like? Because keep in mind, you're also building your future bench. You want people to look at your team, the makeup of your team, the strengths of your team, and want to say, hey, I want to go work for Justin, right? I know that Justin's got a very diverse team. You know, he's got people that do this or that, and we call that out on the team too. You know, this is the person who's really strong in industry knowledge. This is the person who's really strong at getting the deal closed, right? And we're going to share best practices. In fact, I think it's so important, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this. I think it's so important to really give them a lot of ownership in how the team is run. You know, I solicit them for feedback on team meetings. I give them the reins of team meetings a lot. My goal is to spotlight them. I want them to win awards. I want them to get into positions of, you know, promotions and things of that ilk, but I'm always around. If they want me to be in the field with them on a team call, you know, when they're meeting with their teams or with customers, I'm always available. And again, I take it as high praise when they leverage me in those capacities, but I'm not the hero. I want to be the hero maker. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I actually had a really weird feeling last month. So my company, we were doing virtual meetings before it was cool. So 4 years ago, so we have different departments and different branches throughout the country. And so what had happened is many places started feeling siloed. They didn't feel like they were connected to the organization. So 4 years ago, we started doing, we called the Kelsan Way. And it was a 60 to 90 minute pretty much update on different things going on, different initiatives, different campaigns. Our point of it is so that everyone at least one time a month would be able to hear a similar message. So 4 years ago, it was my baby. It was my opportunity to bring the company together. I was proud of that. And then flow forward to last month. And darn it, we had the darn Kelsan Way meeting, and it was probably the best one we've ever had. And I literally did nothing. The entire thing was ran by the different department heads. Outside of me opening the meeting, they took over and did better than I've done. And so I was talking with my wife that evening. I had this feeling of I was proud, but it was also odd, to step away and to recognize, we've built something to where you're not as needed necessarily. But what that's allowed me to do more than anything is focus on larger and other opportunities than just the traditional day-to-day. And I told the team, I was like, this is yours. I mean, seriously, it was so much better than anything that I had done. And it was really, really cool. And so in empowering them to do it, it's been a journey. It was ups and downs. If shameless LinkedIn follow, but if you want to connect or follow with me, I'd say a third of what I post about is screw ups that I've had. And the reason I do that, it's strategic for a couple reasons. One, I dealt with being a salesperson or a sales leader that had an ego, a little arrogant for a large portion of my career. And there's a line I love: humility begets honor. We all want to be honored, but to do so, we have to humble ourselves. So in an effort to humble myself, I post a lot of the screw ups that I've had. And it's an opportunity. My hope is that other people can hear, oh man, other people in higher positions have made mistakes also. So when you're going through that mistake, that you might feel a little more comfortable, or even better, you might read that mistake and then choose to do something slightly different. So it's been a journey getting to the point where I'm okay turning everything to my team, and I'm so proud of them and thankful to be able to do so.
That's a really neat learning. To be able to look at the things that got you here, aren't necessarily the things that you're going to be doing going forward, right? I mean, you want to be able to show others how it's done and give them that framework with which to operate. And, I have a lot of people that tell me like, oh, Carson, I'd love to do X, Y, Z like you did, or this or that. I always say aim higher. Because I'm just one person. And don't get me wrong, I'm a collection of a lot of the ideas and things of that stature that I've, gleaned from all over the place. Those are a lot of what inform my strategy. But I think it's amazing what can happen with the collective when you give people that opportunity to take something, to own it, to make it theirs. It was very similar in my current organization with digital selling. I became known for leveraging LinkedIn and other tools to create executive relationships and ultimately drive deals, drive meaningful partnerships. And, when I was last promoted, my leader challenged me with a very similar thing. It's like, look, the things that got you here, that's not going to be your day to day. You need to find those next ambassadors of the business to be able to do that. And Justin, what's funny to me is that you and I, it sounds like we've suffered from similar afflictions. I was very similar in that, when I was much younger, I was promoted very, very quickly, and I got a very false sense of reality. I thought that I always had to be the smartest person in the room. I thought that I had to have an immediate reaction or response. If somebody presented me a problem, I had to solve it just like that, or I wasn't worth my weight. And in realizing over time, I had a couple of very humbling scenarios in my life, and most of my posts are lessons that I've learned, sometimes the hard way too. I want to go there. I want to talk a little more about your status as a thought leader, how you approach that, and does it complement or does it how does it separate from your day to day? Because I know personally my career, I thought that I had peaked years ago, right? I thought I was at this phenomenal spot. I was getting up every day, giving these sales speeches to 100 plus sellers. And I thought I was just, I thought I was a lot cooler than I was. And it wasn't until I realized, how many brilliant people were around me and how much stronger I was when I got these other phenomenal people in the boat with me. That's when I realized I could be even better, when I had that always learning mindset. And so what I'd love to focus on, both of us, I think, are pretty active with social, and I think we've exceeded expectations and that we've met a lot of amazing people. I mean, case in point, we're sitting here right now because of leveraging LinkedIn for that very reason. I love the fact that I can connect with folks, learn from people all the time. And before we hopped on, I was just talking and commenting about some of my thoughts around some of your recent posts, and I always learn so much. But I love the human element that you infuse into that. Has it been something that has complemented your brand within your day-to-day job? And any thoughts that you would share on kind of that thought leadership balanced alongside your career?
Yeah, sure. There's a number of ways we can take this. I'm going to take it away in something I think could be really powerful for the C-suite. If you're a VP or in the C-suite at all, and you're currently not using social media for whatever reason, whether you're insecure, you're too busy, it could be a number of reasons. One of my biggest takeaways since I got more active in LinkedIn, I've started sharing some personal life about my family, different things that come up, inspiration. But what it's done more than anything, we found employees from it, we found customers from it, we found a lot of really cool things from LinkedIn. But it's helped me so much more culturally in my organization. So when my title changed, when my title went from director to VP, I instantly changed in the eyes in a large portion of our organization as far as availability to communicate to talk with. And what's been really, really cool is when I go to the office, we might have some newer employees that I don't know at all or very well, and they come up and start talking to me about what's happened on my LinkedIn. And that's allowed me to connect to them on a really personal level in person because of that social aspect. And so the majority of the times, if you go to any type of a seminar, many times that C-suite really want to know, they want their ear to the ground to where they're truly connected to their teams and to their people. But it's difficult because there's that title differentiation, the way you look at you. But if you'll start to share about your life, the book, Bob Burg, Go Giver, give without expectation. So you start giving without expectation, and then your team is going to feel drawn to you in a way that you go to the office, and you're not going in an uncomfortable to interrupt someone at their cubicle. They're coming up to you to talk about that cool thing your daughter did on LinkedIn. And that has been really, really remarkable, what I didn't expect. I expected we'd get customers, and we did. I expected we'd recruit talent, and we did. I did not expect it to draw closer to our organization and the culture that's so important to us.
That's amazing feedback. It's one of those things, if you're an executive watching this, or just, whatever role you carry, social gives you this amazing ability and responsibility, but amazing ability to convey some of your thoughts, to stand out in a positive way. And I think if I were to give any advice in that realm, it's, don't be afraid to take that leap and to, have that risk of, making some type of content that you put out there into the world, because it creates that human bond. I, like you, was doing a lot of these things even before the pandemic, but the pandemic breathed even new life into this because a lot of folks were going to social like never before. In fact, you just called it out. Senior executives were actually some of the most engaged during that time. And when I think about some of the prolific great leaders, even in my own company, that have been very active in social just over the last few years, you're right. It makes them feel a lot more approachable. It makes them feel much more at the pulse of what matters to me. And like you said, real, which adds that element of credibility. Transparency and trust are a lot of the reasons that we gravitate toward leaders and other colleagues and other people that we work with, why we do business. But I think that's a really valuable element that we can all take away as far as that social presence. I know we're coming up on time here, and I appreciate the time. Anything else, Justin, that you would want to hit on before we would sign off today?
Yeah, I guess I'll end with a halfway shameless plug. It's not created yet, but it is potentially beneficial. So the question I like to ask any of the other leaders or people listening is our entire lives. You think back to when you're 5 years old and you want to learn to be a better jump roper. You want to get better at jump rope, you get a jump rope and you practice. When you're in middle school, you want to get better at a sport, you go to practices. You go into high school, you want to do better at the SAT, the ACT, you practice, right? Then the moment you get out of whatever last level of school you have, whether that's high school, doctorate, however far you go, you get into the real world, and the way we've learned our entire lives by practicing stops. What starts happening is they hand SOPs and they say, here's your job, go do it, call me when something goes wrong and we'll talk through it. So our entire adult life, or our entire life up to an adult, we work on practicing and then it ends. And so been really fortunate, it's a passion of mine to think, how do we bring practice into the work field? How do we simplify that so that a leader can run a practice to where it's not uncomfortable, to where it's not intimidating, and to where as a group you can get better together as a team. And so been really fortunate to work with a bunch of leaders on helping them practice at work. And the results have been really, really cool. So my suggestion, or what I'd love you to consider, is, are you practicing with your team? And is there anyone on your team you wish you could help improve, and would practice make it any better? So that's just something it's really special in my heart, in the sense that I think getting better and improving, for all of us, we want it. But apparently in the work world we live in, practicing is no longer normal, and I want to change that.
That's profound. Obviously professional athletes, a lot of people that, operate in, different realms have found ways to practice, but it's not commonplace, not the way it should be. Even as salespeople, we bark about role plays or when we're asked to role play, but if done right and done accurately, and especially if we're arming our teams with ways to have conversations better, ways to approach conversations better, ways to approach certain scenarios. Even just having a conversation with somebody on your team who's about to go into a difficult conversation and bouncing ideas off of each other so that you can help them see around corners that are coming. Those things are very, very valuable. That's a great, thought-provoking, provocative statement to make, and I would challenge all leaders out there. Think about the environment that you're setting up. Is it conducive to practice, opportunity to fail in a place of comfort where we can all sit in that together and learn from each other, and then go out and do it better, because it's only going to make your process more impactful.
At the beginning, we talked about intentionality. You can intentionality empower your team. You can intentionality create a coaching culture. But you have to decide you're not just going to react. You're going to say, hey, we are going to become an organization that practices, that works on improving before that thing happens. And it's exciting to think about.
As hard as it is, don't react. Giving that opportunity to understand the intention behind things, or to be curious about why your team thinks a certain way, or to understand their perspective, making sure that they feel comfortable sharing their perspective and asking questions. Those are the teams that go the farthest.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Justin, I always enjoy our chats. Thank you so much for the time, as always. I know that there was a lot of phenomenal takeaways during today's chat. So thank you, and I look forward to the next time.
Carson, you're the man. Thank you.
Thank you.